Good afternoon and welcome to Senator John Cavanaugh, legislative candidate from District 9. Senator Cavanaugh is having some visual difficulties this afternoon with his camera, so he will not be appearing on camera, but you will be hearing his voice throughout the conversation. Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today is Susan DeCamp, our volunteer state president, and advocacy lead volunteers Joyce Beck, Bob Lassen, and Mike Barwig. Senator, we appreciate your taking the time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in Nebraska. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. Senator Cavanaugh, if you want to start us off by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign, maybe 5 minutes or less on that, that would be great. And then once we've completed your opening, we'll move into the questions. So I'll turn it back to you, Senator.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gina. Thanks, everybody, for having me. I love working with the AARP on so many different issues. And I do apologize that I guess the updated Zoom is in conflict with my camera. So I can't get my camera to turn on. But it's nice to see all of you. Yeah, so I represent District 9, Midtown Omaha. And I'm running for re-election. Spent my first 4 years working on a number of issues. One of my favorite bills is one I did work on with AARP, which was home equity theft bill, and very proud of the fact that we got that bill passed as quickly as we did, and helping folks not be subject to their home, the equity they built up in their home being lost through the title process. If they fail to pay their property taxes or fall on some hard times and are unable to pay them, that even if in that worst case scenario, they still are able to recapture whatever equity they still own. I would point out that the Supreme Court of Nebraska just ruled in the Fair case last week that the company that bought the liens on Mr. Fair's property are the ones that are responsible to pay him back his lost equity, which was the only remaining question after that bill and the U.S. Supreme Court case had passed. So going forward, we shouldn't encounter problems like that. But of course, we have to always be vigilant because people are always trying to take advantage of people. So I'm very proud that we were able to accomplish that bill. Happy to have been able to vote for the caregiver tax credit that was in, I want to say it was $6.99, but I can't remember the bill number exactly. That bill I'm pretty proud of as well because it included my elimination of tax on diapers, sales tax on diapers going forward. So that's one of my more favored legislative accomplishments as well. Campaigning, if you're interested in the nitty gritty, and District 9 is a big door knocking district. And I love door knocking. We knocked thousands of doors in the primary. We're on our way on our next pass through the district right now of knocking doors. I won the primary with 70% of the vote, and it's 50% plus one. Everything else is for ego, but I do hope to have a strong showing in the general election of similar 70% range. Would make me happy, and so I'm going to work every day to represent my constituents and to get out there and communicate with them and talk about my accomplishments and listen to what their concerns are. Just last night, knocking doors, had some great conversations with folks, and one of them, 100% disabled veteran, very interested in medical marijuana for treating his PTSD. So, that type of thing you hear when you're knocking on doors. I've always supportive of medical marijuana, but it's good to put those things in context. And so that's why knocking doors is so important. But anyway, I could talk ad nauseum about those things, but here to answer your questions and hear your concerns.
Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. And thank you again, yes, for your leadership on the home equity theft piece. We're forever grateful for that and appreciate your leadership on that and it being passed, as you said, in that timely fashion. And then most importantly, I think for this past session, thank you again for your support of the caregiver tax credit. I think we have lots more to do on that in that area, but this is a step forward in obviously making Nebraska having the most comprehensive tax credit for caregivers in the United States is pretty amazing. So thank you for your leadership on that. We're going to just switch over now and begin with question 1. Joyce Beck is going to take that, and it relates to health, caregiving, and home and community-based care. So Joyce, go ahead.
Well, Senator Cavanaugh, thank you so much for meeting with us, and I do appreciate all the work that you do in the legislature. 84% of Nebraskans over 45 say that staying in their home as they get older is extremely important to them. Home and community-based services, as well as the area agencies on aging, become important assets to caregivers as they care for loved ones. Home care not only meets the needs of their loved ones, but it also provides relief to an already strained long-term care industry. So here's my questions for you, Senator Cavanaugh. What would you do to protect and/or expand the home and community-based programs, particularly recruitment and retention of a significant workforce and adequately funded for the programs and services that older Nebraskans and their families rely on? And second question is, what would you do to support the 179,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska?
Well, yeah, that's, I mean, a serious issue we're facing going forward. And I mean, obviously, I'm supportive of the caregiver tax credit. I'm supportive of a more expanded caregiver tax credit. And I think just in the question, you hit the crux of it, which is it's from like a fiscal standpoint of the state, it is more economical for us to care for folks in their home, to keep people in their home as long as possible. It's obviously the life that people want to live. My in-laws are getting to that age where we're, working with, we've gone through this sort of stepped up, approach where it's started with somebody coming in once a week, then now somebody coming in twice a week to help them with things like dishes and laundry and just sort of like those day-to-day, everyday tasks of living. But it's continued to step it up. And the fact that they're still in their home means we still have family events at my in-laws' house, means we still get to have that sort of community. And we as a family, being my wife's family and extended family, my parents are a little bit younger, but the extended family, that's the goal, is to keep them as long as possible, but to keep an eye on the realistic options of when we need to be, considerate of that. But yeah, what can we do to support folks? Obviously, making sure that we're paying those workers a wage that job makes sense for them. Nobody's going to do a job that they can't make a living at. And if it doesn't pay enough, you're going to get less qualified folks doing it. And when I think about, my in-laws and my parents at this moment, that I want to make sure that the care that they're bringing in, I can feel confident in, that it's actually going to be quality care and it's going to be safe for them. So yeah, I'm certainly in favor of making sure that we are giving adequate pay to those folks. I'm certainly, I've been actually talking with, not that it's this topic, but talking with long-term care facilities and had ideas of trying to figure out how we can get more nurses to be trained to work in long-term facilities, in ideas like, student loan forgiveness or actual programmatic, where they go to school for free for their nursing certificate if they commit to working, in long-term care for a certain amount of time. So I think we have to take, incentives in the education side, make sure that pay is adequate, and then make sure that insurance understands that, they can pay whatever, $10,000 a year or $100,000 a year, and that they're smart about what they're going to pay for. So I think all of those above approaches. But yeah, I would, if I can get the ideas together, I would hope to bring a bill next year, and that would have something to do with incentives for nursing care in particular, which is not exactly in-home care, but that's the space I'm looking at.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. And again, yes, thank you for your continued support of caregivers. I know you've supported other initiatives too in the legislature, and clearly understand the issue from your own personal perspective, so we appreciate that. Question number 2 now comes from Mike Barwig, and it's to address consumer fraud, exploitation, and protections. So go ahead, Mike. Mike, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Senator Cavanaugh. Scammers are increasingly targeting older adults with scams such as wire transfers, gift card scams, and schemes involving real property. Nationwide, the average victim of elder fraud lost nearly $34,000 due to these crimes in 2023. And in Nebraska, the FTC showed that there were more than 4,643 fraud reports made. Nearly 9 in 10 consumers agree that lawmakers need to do more to protect consumers from fraud and scams. With that in mind, our question for you is, consumers lose billions of dollars each year to online financial, property, and other types of fraud. What will you do to address and ensure that Nebraskans are protected against fraud and deceptive or unfair business practices, and provide opportunities for redress to victims of fraud? Would you support enacting laws to require merchants that sell gift cards to post notices, enactment of a consumer fraud restitution fund, implementation of preventative or corrective measures to assist in combating owner-seller housing impersonation fraud?
Well, that's a tough one. I mean, I certainly support the notices, and this is a tough one, right? Because the folks who are being defrauded are so scared when it happens. And so I think point of sale kind of training to be on the lookout for this sort of thing would be a great opportunity and a great step for our retail establishments to, help people. And I certainly am in favor of that. And a restitution fund, of course. I don't really understand. I don't know the last one, the third-party sale of homes. That's a new one to me. I guess I don't know what that is about. But the problem we face with fraud is a lot of it, I think, is coming from overseas. And so it's very hard for us to crack down on. We can pass any number of laws, and most of these things, I mean, they're against the law, but even the method of communication is against the law. You're not allowed to robocall people. You're not allowed to auto text people and things to the degree that they're doing this without their express permission. And these over Eastern European fraudsters or Nigerian or whatever, they're doing that. So we have to find ways that we can actually help people. And I think making sure that we're on the lookout, I mean, certainly holding them accountable, freezing bank accounts when we can, or recuperating the assets, and creating a restitution fund, I think is huge. But if we can, I do think that point of sale of the gift card or money orders or things like that, and banks, of course, financial institutions being aware of this, to just ask those sorts of questions. And I don't know exactly what the questions are, what the scam du jour is, but being in that, them having that sort of training so they can say, hey, do you want to talk to somebody, and having somebody at Hy-Vee, well, that's where I buy most of my gift cards, but, having Hy-Vee know that what to do in those situations and notify people and make sure that we stop it before it gets that far, I think would be a huge step that something we can actually do. And I'm always looking for ideas that will actually improve people's lives in a concrete way. And I think that's one of them. So I certainly support that, but I'd like to hear more about the housing thing. I don't know what that is.
Senator, I'm going to have Susan DeCamp. She's an appraiser. And so I know Susan worked a lot on the home equity theft and some of the bills that were passed this year with Senator Dover on housing fraud. And Susan has a pretty good explanation on that. So Susan, if you want to take just a couple minutes here to update him.
Sure. I'm not an appraiser, but I own a title, an abstract company. I'm a title agent. And so I deal a lot with real estate. And recently there have been a lot of fraud happening in the real estate industry with seller impersonation. We're not sure how much there is in Nebraska at this point, but there are other states that have been experiencing a lot of seller fraud. People pretending or saying that they own property and then selling it online to people, or even fraudulently witnessing papers and signing deeds fraudulently. And it's another form of theft, actually, for property that people have owned. A lot of them, they're preying on elderly owners, people who own empty lots, they feel, and a lot of them who live out of state. They're preying upon those kind of properties to go in and say that they're the seller, do a fraudulent sale. Again, we're not sure how much it's happening here in Nebraska, but there has been a lot of real estate fraud. Like Gina mentioned, we did pass the bill last year where they had that long-term real estate listing where they would prey upon older people in particular and give them a few $100s up front. In turn, they would sign an agreement that for 40 years, this realtor would be their listing agent. And if they didn't follow through with this listing agent and use someone else, they would put a lien against the property, then which ties up the property, all the equity that the people had in the property. So again, they're just targeting, there's been a lot of real estate fraud. So we're trying to be proactive in this area.
Well, yeah, I mean, I that's news to me, but not surprising. There's everybody's, scammers are looking for every angle they can scam on.
Right.
I mean, I'd certainly be interested in doing something about that. Obviously I have an interest in preserving people's property rights, and especially folks who've spent their entire life building up that equity and making sure that they have access to it and are secure in that. And if there's anything out there we can do about it, I'd be interested. But yeah, since it's an issue of first impression, I guess I don't have a thought of what we could actually do yet.
Right. And we're just getting started on this issue. We're doing a lot more research on this issue, but we thought it might come to the forefront, on this next session, maybe. So
I think I did talk to the realtors about that long-term
yes.
one. That was an issue for them this last year, I know.
Yes.
So I've heard of that one, but not about the people selling properties, but it doesn't surprise me.
Okay. Thanks.
And I apologize, Susan. I knew you were an abstractor and I don't know why appraiser came to mind. So my apologies on that. Thank you, Senator. I think that this may be more future conversation. We'll follow up with you. And if you're willing to have a conversation with us as we have more information, it is a national movement that there are several groups coming together to put together legislation. So if you're interested, we may certainly come to you and have that conversation moving forward. So thank you for that.
Please do.
Our last question then, Senator, comes from Bob Lassen. We're going to switch over, and I know this is an area that you have some passion about too, but livable communities, housing, and the topic is helping people stay in their homes and communities. So go ahead, Bob.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Senator, for being on today. AARP's goal is to allow people to age in place and stay at the lowest level of care and cost as long as possible. And to that end, I've got a couple things today that we're going to be talking about. One of them is zoning that prohibits property development and property tax. The zoning obstacles allow just single-family residential homes. And in these communities, zoning does not include other types of housing, such as accessory dwelling units, ADUs, manufactured homes, intergenerational duplexes, or apartment buildings that may be a better option for these people. And then the second part of this is going to be the property tax. Again, there's nothing new here, but it's particularly burdensome for our homeowners who are low incomes, many of them relying specifically on Social Security, which I think the minimum payment is like or $1,400, something like that. And then a little bit about a homestead exemption. So Nebraskans over 65 are the fastest growing segment of our population, and research shows that most want to remain in their homes and communities as they age. As housing costs continue to increase, older adults are unable to find housing to meet their needs when seeking to downsize, and thus are being pushed out of the communities and homes where they've lived for generations. What would you do to support, incentivize, and ensure creation of affordable and diverse housing options, such as accessory dwelling units, integration of housing, manufactured housing units, and townhomes? And then the second question was, will you fight to ensure that the homestead exemption program is maintained and protected to ensure the older Nebraskans that qualify continue to have access to the tax relief program as they age?
Well, that's, yeah, you're right that you hit on basically a lot of my favorite topics there, Bob. Well, to just start it backwards, homestead exemption, of course, I want to fight to protect homestead exemption and expand it. I actually proposed in the property tax special session, my proposal was a expansion of homestead exemption to include everyone. And the way my bill worked was on top of current homestead exemption. So I'm sure you all are aware that somebody can get, you know, for age and income level, they can get up to 100% homestead exemption, but you can have a lesser amount. My bill, as was written, it obviously didn't pass, but would have been a 100% exemption up to $100,000. So if you had, say, a $200,000 home and you qualified for a 50% homestead exemption currently, you would add my bill on top of that and basically get that person to 100%. But it would have been everybody would get that 100,000. And my intention was to not penalize folks who are currently getting homestead. So that's why I stacked it on top of the current homestead exemption. I'm obviously in favor of, you know, increasing the income eligibilities for the current homestead exemption program. I think that homestead exemption, as it's currently written, is a great program, does need to be expanded. And I think that my bill, the reason I proposed it was it's targeted property tax relief specifically to owner-occupied homes in Nebraska. And so my bill didn't give property tax relief to Ted Turner, to Bill Gates, to whoever else, these huge landowners in Western Nebraska, which is why my bill would have given everybody, every homeowner in District 9, which is how I think about it, $2,200. So you would have got $2,200 if you lived in District 9. You would have gotten, actually, it would have been a little less in Lincoln because their levies are lower, but like $1,800 in Lincoln. And Jim Pillen, under his original plan, would have got $1 million tax cut. Under my plan, he would have got about $2,200. So my plan was way more economical, way more targeted tax relief. So that's type of thing I intend to continue to pursue. Obviously, not everybody's a homeowner. We have to couple that with renter tax credit as well to help folks in those situations and to stay in home. And yeah, obviously to supply, huge issue. Home cost, the shortage of homes available in the affordable range, which is, we'll say, less than $200,000. There's just not enough of them. There's a great, you know, the NIFA, which is the Nebraska financing organization. They have a study that says, you know, people making a certain income can afford a house. You know, say you make up to $75,000, you can afford up to a $200,000 house. And there's, you know, 100,000 people in that range, and there's like 2,200 homes. So it's like there's just no homes available to people who can afford them. And then people who are above that income, they buy those homes, those 2,200 homes, because they can, you know, make a higher offer than we're asking and things like that. And so the shortage of housing is a huge problem, and we need to attack it from all different angles. Meaning, we need to address zoning with things like allowing for building of accessory dwelling units, which is of course a passion project of mine. I'm a big missing middle is a thing I'm very interested in, which goes, you know, to transit. You don't have the ability to have a robust transit system unless you have the density. And one of the ways you get density is you get missing middle housing, which includes accessory dwelling units. So I'm very interested in that. I don't know if you guys had a bill. I've had conversations about, you know, uniform plans that are be acceptable from all jurisdictions, because of course building houses, one of the big expenses is getting plans approved. My brother runs Holy Name Housing, which we have a lot of conversations about how much of a hassle it is for him to get kind of the plans approved for their big projects to build 10 homes on a property. So having more I guess, permissive zoning and deviation from zoning, I think is really important. Getting, allowing for variances with a little bit more ease while still respecting, integrity of communities and the local options. So communities can, we're not talking about building a 300 unit apartment complex in, the middle of a residential neighborhood, but certainly allowing for those townhomes. We have some great townhomes on 52nd and Leavenworth that I think built about 40 units, townhome units, in the place of about 4 small homes, which is a good step in the right direction. But then, of course, making sure that when we projects do capture tax incentives, which are things like TIF or others, that they make sure that they have an affordability element to them. So that's really important to me. But yeah, making sure that we are building more. We need more houses. We need more houses, and we need more houses at, the certain price point. All the developers, it makes more economic sense for developers to build a $350,000 house than a $150,000 house. And that's a tough nut to crack. And that's where government needs to come in and help out, because they're not going to build a house they can't make money off of. And I don't expect them to. So we have to figure out how to make it make sense for them to build those houses that we need. Because I don't want to live in a McMansion. I can't afford to live in a McMansion, and nobody else can. But that's what the market bears. So yeah, I'm really interested in doing everything we can, and always working. Housing issues are near and dear to my heart. I think I came from, I was a public defender, worked in the criminal justice system. And I tell you, the biggest thing that I learned across that was that instability in housing leads to instability in work, instability in access to healthcare, instability in being able to build up your life, poor performance for kids in schools because of the instability of housing. It leads to all of these other problems that we have in our society. And so if we can build a more robust and secure housing sector, then that will help solve all of these other problems that we have, and make everybody's life better. Those folks will have a better life, but so will their neighbors, because their community will be stronger and more robust and consistent. It's fun. I've lived in my house for 11 years. It's fun to have my neighbor across the street be my same neighbor for all those 11 years. We're planning our block party right now. You build a relationship with people. They're some of my best friends. I want people to stay there, stay in our neighborhood for, as long as possible. And actually, my neighbor across the street is an older lady, and she's my 6-year-old daughter's best friend. So
There's nothing better than that, is there, Senator?
Yeah.
Great answers.
And I will say, Senator, Senator Lowe had LB 1166 and 1165 this last session that didn't make it out of committee, but I know that there's some work being done to revamp that.
Yeah, that was
especially
the accessory dwelling unit one,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, yeah, I that one I don't remember. I think I missed the hearing on that one. I think I had to be in court is actually, I think, where it was. But I was very interested in that bill, and I actually didn't sign on to it because I thought if I signed on to it, it would actually hurt it. So
well, I know there's an interim study coming up on it, and I know there's some talk about reworking some of that to make it a little bit more friendly to local control and that sort of thing. So, we may be knocking on your door to have some further conversations on that issue and many more. And again, I do appreciate your passion and support for all the housing. And of course, yes, the homestead exemption, appreciate your support of that also. So we're coming to the end of our time today, Senator Cavanaugh, but I would like to take a few minutes or give you back a couple more minutes to talk about what priorities you have for serving in the legislature, or if there are any specific issues that you plan to work on outside of what we've already talked about or addressed during your time when you come back to the legislature. So I'll give you a couple minutes back.
Sure. Well, thanks everybody for your time and for your questions and your interest. And obviously the issues you advocate for matter a great deal to a lot of Nebraskans. Well, I mean, I certainly am looking at housing issues for next session, looking at mental health issues. Like I said, I'm working on, and not far enough along to have a concrete idea on incentivizing long-term care nursing, but a project I just sort of started this interim with some of my constituents who are all former nurses, and that live in Elmwood Tower, which is a building in my district that is age restricted. So retired nurses live there, and working with them, I'm very excited about the ideas. We just don't have a concrete one yet. So I plan on, if I can get that done, I'll bring that. I'm working on trying to make a more comprehensive plan on my homestead exemption expansion for next year, which I hope, well, I'm definitely bringing something. I just don't know exactly what the form is on that. And let's see, what else am I excited about next year? Oh, well, I don't, we didn't talk about it. It's not necessarily fraud related, but I'll probably bring my cancellation bill. I brought a bill last year to allow, if you can sign up for a service online, they have to allow you to cancel online. That was a bill I brought last year that didn't get out of the Banking, Commerce, Insurance Committee. It's a relatively new idea. Only 2 other states have done it. So we just kind of ran into some hiccups and its unintended consequences. So I'm very interested in making it as easy to cancel services as it is to sign up for them. And so I'll probably bring that bill again if I can get that done. Let's see, what else am I excited about that I'm bringing next year? I mean, always criminal justice related bills. I've got a lot of those ideas. I actually am working, I have an interim study about the CBD shops. Not an issue you guys probably care about, but they just, even for my taste, they're too prolific. And I think we need to find a way to just have some kind of guardrails around them and regulations. So working on that, seeing if I can get an idea together, concrete enough to actually push that idea. Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of ideas out there, but those are the ones I'm probably most interested in. Yeah, I don't know, but thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. Again, thank you for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign. And again, thank you for meeting with AARP today. Take care.
Thank you. See y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, thank you.